everyone. Welcome on into another episode of Golf on Tap. As always, I'm Jack Bushman here with Ross Baran. If you're watching us right now and not already on the YouTube feed, make sure to go and jump over there so you can interact with us throughout today's episode. Share your thoughts on Shane Lowry and Rory McIlroy's win last week at the Zurich Classic, and also who you're going to be tailing here or who you're interested in on this Monday morning for the CJ Cup Byron Nelson at TPC Craig Ranch. And also, if you're thinking about betting on this tournament and you're not already a member over at Bet Rivers, make sure to go and use our promo code on tap to get up to a $250 bonus on your first deposit. Ross, last week's Zurich Classic, a little bit of an off week, if you will, for the golf content community. In terms of my interest, never really too high or something that I gamble on, just because it is a team event and usually where it falls in the schedule. Just kind of a nice little off week, time to recuperate and reset after Scotty Scheffler's gone on his heater of his. I also had some life things going on, so I didn't watch the Zurich Classic in totality, but did tune in for the final few hours, which I thought was pretty captivating. Obviously, we got a playoff between Shane Lowry, Rory McIlroy, and Chad Ramey and Martin Trainer. I thought it was a good finish to the tournament, all in all. Kind of a puke fest there at the end as everyone threw up all over themselves a little bit, except for Shane and Rory. But I thought it was a fun finish. Glad I tuned in. Ross, how you doing this afternoon? And your thoughts on the end of the Zurich Classic this week, my friend?
I am doing well, and I don't think there's been a more true statement for I'm a golf fan. I love watching golf. This weekend was just really tough to stay locked in on it until the final 4 or 5 holes, which is really all you needed to see, where the leaders start puking all over themselves going into the final couple holes. Rory and Shane finally decide to be Rory and Shane, and we got to the playoff, which I kind of expected that result when you got Ramey and Trainer sitting around for almost 3 hours waiting. So
yeah, is what it is. Ramey and Trainer, unfortunately, they shot 9 under 63, which ties the Sunday record at TPC Louisiana. And 63 an alternate shot is absolutely unbelievable. But you alluded to it, just the 3-hour layover and, going and eating lunch and also just having the time from like the momentum and the energy and the intensity. It kind of drains from you for those 3 hours. You lose everything. And then you got to go warm up again and kind of piece everything back together. Whereas, Shane and Rory, obviously being in one of the final groups, got off a little bit later. They were able to kind of keep the ball rolling there in the playoff. Not that, they played that par 5 18th in extra time, all that great, but just played it a little bit better than Trainer and Ramey. Unfortunately, you could kind of tell that 3-hour layover didn't do them any favors, which I thought was a little bit disappointing. As I told you before we recorded, it would have been a little bit of a cooler story for, Martin Trainer and Chad Ramey to maybe tell their grandkids one day, hey, we went toe-to-toe with Rory McIlroy and Shane Lowry at the Zurich Classic. We shot 63 on Sunday, but they just got the better of us in the playoff. Rory and Shane still made a little bit of an ugly 5, but Ramey and Trainer hit like 5 or 6 consecutive just awful shots to kind of hand that thing over to Rory and Shane. And then also Zach Blair and Patrick Fishburne got to be feeling like they let one slip away as they make a double bogey on the tough par 3 17th that dropped them out of a share of the lead at 25 under. That was the number that you needed to put up in order to get into the playoff. If they just go and make a 3 there at 17, they would have had a chance at the end of regulation to birdie the par 5 18th and go and win that thing outright at 26 under. The double bogey down the stretch cost them, and it just kind of felt like the moment might have been a little bit too big, as you alluded to. Patrick Fishburne only in his 11th career PGA Tour start, so unfortunate to see them kind of turn into some dead fish there at the end. The team that I thought really, though, was going to go and snag this thing from everyone, Ross, was my boy Mark Hubbard and Ryan Ambrem for real, because they were playing really well throughout the entire tournament. They had that super low Friday and got off to a decent start on the front nine, but just weren't able to make anything down the stretch. And if you're listening or watching this right now and are a Mark Hubbard fan like me, then you know it's kind of a symptom of Mark Hubbard for whatever reason. He just always seems to play 15, 16, 17, and 18 terrible. The dude couldn't hit a putt on the back nine. If he hits any of those, I think Brem and Hubbard are probably the team that takes this down. And I'm sure you probably saw Ryan Brem's second shot on 18, Ross. Absolutely smokes a 3-wood, 293 yards over the green. Absolutely flushed it. Unfortunately, Hubbard and he weren't able to get up and down there. So yeah, just kind of no one was able to go and take that thing, and just allowed for Shane and Rory to be the ones that kind of closed it out. It wasn't like, I mean, and maybe this is a little bit unfairly because of how it finished, I wasn't super impressed with Shane and Rory's victory, but sometimes you don't need to be the best team to take it all. You just need to be the team that doesn't gag it away. And we've kind of seen that with Scotty Scheffler over the last handful of weeks, like coming down the stretch, thinking about the Masters, Colin Morikawa, Ludwig Oberg, all these guys make mistakes, whereas Scotty Scheffler didn't. I kind of got the same vibes from Rory McIlroy and Shane Lowry in this one. They weren't, on top of their A game per se, but they did enough in crunch time, took advantage of the par fives late in order to get this victory, Ross.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I did have them as one of my picks this week, which was nice. But one of the things I alluded to why I picked them was Rory's length off the tee with Shane Lowry's irons. I thought that was going to be an unbelievable combination, and it turned out that Rory just was the one bailing them out on everything because Shane could not hit a fucking iron to save his life at all.
I thought it was funny. I thought it was funny that he told Colt on the par 5 18th during regulation. He only had 218 in after Rory hit like a 357-yard drive, and he was like, I don't know what to do from up here. But no, Shane was pretty bad on Sunday. Like, the irons were not very good from the advantages that Rory was giving him. And he also really was doing typical Shane things on Sunday. He wasn't making putts. And I was a little scared over that 3-footer that he needed to force that playoff. I didn't know if Rory was going to be like, all right, Shane, just go and knock this bad boy in, dog. Come on now.
Well, I mean, you already said it. And it happened again on Sunday on 18 when they're a stroke behind on the par 5. Rory cranked it 360 yards down there to where all of a sudden all of us are sitting here like, oh shit, Shane can hit this in there for an eagle where they can just win this thing outright. Shane goes 45 yards to the left.
And the shot Shane had on 17, our poor beloved Rory McIlroy stan, Mr. Tony Marchese, was not able to join us tonight. Hopefully we'll be able to get Rory lover Tony here on the show sometime soon, because I know he was very pleased with the way that things turned out on Sunday afternoon. But it's always funny, and I give Tony a hard time for this, but whenever he texts me or you about a guy doing well, it's literally like the flip of the switch. Everything goes wrong. And that's why when he texted us when I was at Valero, they're like, Akshay's going to hold on to this, right? I'm like, why would you say that right now? Why would you say that? You know what you do when you make these statements. So for him to text us after Rory and Shane made that birdie on 16, like, let's fucking go, he's super pumped. Immediately, Shane hits it 40 yards right on 17. I was like, oh my God, this is a typical Tony thing that could happen.
Yeah, especially when they were my only team at the end, like legitimately in the running for me to come out with a little bit of a bankroll on the week. And he said that, I was like, come on, dude.
I know. Try having Akshay. I got $11 on a 70-1 sweat here. I'm watching him melt down in front of my face, and Tony's just nonchalant, like, oh, Akshay's gonna hold on to this, right?
Yeah. So there is that, and I don't know if you saw after they won the tournament, when they're taking all the pictures with the belts and everything, there's a picture of Rory where he's got like this half-hearted smile, and I said, that's the moment Rory realized, oh fuck, I gotta play in this thing next year now, don't I?
Oh, he's fully signed up now. Him and Shane are gonna be coming back for a long, long time. But as a result of their win, we got some great content out of this, Ross. Nothing more notable or more entertaining than watching Rory and Shane go full karaoke to Journey Don't Stop Believin' following the victory. That was awesome. I loved everything about that.
It's a whole side of Rory that we never get to see. It was incredible. If you haven't seen anyone that hasn't seen the video, trust me, it's 100% worth a watch. It is fucking hilarious to see this version of Rory. And on top of him playing next year, Rory was just a fill-in for Shane for this year. I had a theory this whole time that prior to the move, I figured this was going to be like Shane and Tyrrell Hatton as a team.
That would have been a good duo. That would have been
And
a good duo.
I figured this probably fell into where, Shane and Tyrrell probably were a team. Tyrrell leaves for Liv and Shane calls in a favor. And Rory's like, yeah, fuck it. I'll do it 1 year for you. Well, now you won the thing. You got to come back. But you know who did not come back? Last year's champions, Patrick Cantlay and Xander Schauffele, just non-existent like all weekend.
2 years ago champions, because Nick Hardy and Nick, but I know what you mean. They're out of like the big dogs. Those are the two that are kind of there regularly. And yeah, I mean, I was never going to get behind. I mean, I didn't bet on the tournament regardless, but if I did, there was no way in hell I was going to get behind a 4-1 Xander and Patrick Cantlay number. I mean, like I said, I didn't really tune in much throughout the majority of this event, but didn't see their name up at the top whatsoever. Did they make the cut?
They did make the cut, and they played on Sunday. They just did typical Patrick Cantlay, Xander Schauffele Sunday things where, we're going to shoot like even par. God.
Typical dead fish. Lots of dead fish on Sunday at the Zurich Classic. But final thoughts here, Ross, before we kind of move on to some other things that are going on involving the PGA Tour right now. I did want to ask you, because I had this thought on Sunday afternoon, and I don't know if this actually is a good idea, but it was just something that popped into my head, because I think the Zurich is captivating. And it sounded sure like the broadcast was, and Colton Ost referenced that he had never really seen the crowd as big as it was this year, particularly for the weekend. And I think that's just a sign of the Rory effect. I saw it at Valero. Like, it was absolutely packed to the gills there. And I think just Rory McIlroy having that star power just brings more to the tournament. I wonder if the PGA Tour would ever consider making this a signature event, because I think if you put the best on the best teams and actually make people want to be here, and you put it in a good time of the schedule, I think this thing could be interesting. Like, you have Cantlay and Xander, you have Spieth and JT, you have Scheffler and Sam Burns, and I know you have to get the big dogs all on page in order to do this, because let's face it, they're the ones who kind of creates the schedule. And that's why we see, the RBC Heritage of Signature event the week after the Masters and the Travelers the week after the US Open. It's because it makes it easier for these guys in terms of travel and their scheduling, not jumping all around. I just think it would be interesting if you actually had guys come here and care about this thing and want to beat each other. Like, I think that could be fun. But if you make it in a time of the year where no one's going to come, and Shot Tracker this week was off, and but even when it is no names in contention, I thought it was a captivating finish. So I doubt it's ever something that's going to happen. But I do think in a world where team golf at the Ryder Cup, at the President's Cup, and at the junior level is so heavily involved, if you want to integrate the Zurich, if this is what you want to do, you want to integrate it, at least like go all in. Make it cool is my opinion on it. Because if you do it half-assed like they did it this week, you're going to get a lot of people using it as a bye week in the golf content community and not really caring until the last couple of hours. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? I know it's a stretch and a long shot, but I think it would be cool, in my opinion.
This is why you and I are partners, because my question was going to be for you, if they move the Zurich anywhere else in the schedule from coming off this busy stretch of the Masters, RBC, do you think this event would be bigger if you had more names involved?
Yes, I 1,000% agree, dude. And you could make some really captivating teams. Ludwig and Victor Hovland, like, you could make some interesting teams, man.
I really like the team event aspect. I like that this is, one of the only ones in the schedule. It's different. It gets people involved. It's fun to see two of your favorite golfers like Shane and Rory get teamed up. You're expecting them to go nuclear? Nope. There's a shitload of other super talented golfers that when they get put together and have to play each other's shots are just as competitive in a team format. I think that's awesome. I think if they just took a deeper dive and they moved it a little bit further into somewhere else, not as busy off this stretch. I understand like where it fits in now for logistics purposes, but even if you did it earlier in the year or you pushed it a little bit more midsummer to kind of lighten the mood after the majors, maybe leading into FedEx Cup, especially because especially where you can get the superstars out on this major platform and get everyone there, because like you said, the fans, everything really enjoy it. There was a shitload of people there watching. It's just if we could get some bigger names in the field, I think this event has a whole different aspect to it, and I think it's bigger in general.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I mean, shit, New Orleans is a pretty rowdy town. If you give them a good field, I feel like they'll show out and go make it a booze fest on the weekend. And like I said, you put all the big stars and teams, like I think it could be really compelling. Like I said, I know it's going to be a challenge to get everyone on board, but if you make the money worth it for the guys to care about it, put it in a good time of the schedule that fits in along the lines of what they've been doing for signature events this year, I think this could be a really awesome tournament. I just think they're kind of there's a couple of things that are in the way of it taking that next step. So I don't know. We'll see if there is going to be any sorts of rotations for signature events next season. Who knows? There's so many things up in the air today with men's professional golf. We don't even know what the tour is going to look like next year, if there's going to be signature events, if a deal with the PGA Tour and Live is ever going to get done. We're going to have to stay tuned on that front. But Ross, in terms of that kind of topic of discussion, the PGA Tour had some interesting news break last week, and I don't want to say it was a potential solution for Live Golf or anything along those lines, because I don't think that's what it was. But it was reported that they have been offering equity now in terms of their next step in paying the PGA Tour players as part of the newly comprised PGA Tour enterprises. They're going to be vested over an 8-year deal to kind of ensure players stay with the PGA Tour, and they'll be getting big time money. Tiger Woods 100 million, Rory 50, Spieth, JT 30 million, so on and so forth. I don't think they did that as a solution to Live, but I do think it is a little bit of an interesting way to potentially speed things up between the two sides, if that makes sense. What was your kind of initial thoughts when you saw the announcement in terms of the PGA Tour and these payouts that they're going to be giving some of their big name players?
Well, this was initially reported back when they did the SSG deal
Yep.
that the players were going to get some equity, but they did have a hard line where they said it was going to be like the top 30 players on the tour, and essentially that was a way of saying like, hey, the top 30 that didn't just ditch us and go for the money, we are going to award you for for staying with us and being loyal. um so this is really just the first round, but like you said, what people need to realize is like this isn't all at once. This is being dished out kind of like a contract, just over like an 8-year period. These people are going to get this amount of money. I think it is a great step
Yeah.
in the right direction. To You're at least solidifying the guys that were loyal. It's on paper now. This isn't an imaginary thing. It's out there. So like JT, Jordan, Rory, Tiger, the people that backed the PGA Tour and stayed around, like signed on the dotted line. Like, here you go. You're getting your equity. You are a part of this officially. You are a decision maker essentially with what moves forward, and here's your reward for your efforts.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was a big step in the right direction for them. And it just makes sense, like giving the PGA Tour players who are still around, who clearly have stuck with them through this point, they're likely going to moving forward. If they haven't left at this point, I don't really know what anyone's kind of waiting for, to be honest. But I feel like it only makes sense given that, now they have a piece of the pie on the PGA Tour. I don't know if it's necessarily going to change anyone's minds how they feel about things overnight immediately, but I think it does kind of help that, hey, you guys own a percentage of this thing now. We all want to grow the game together, do what's best for the game, because if we do that, well, then everybody wins. We're all going to make more money here. So I think that was just kind of a naturalistic next step for the PGA Tour to take. And I think it was smart giving out money to the guys who have stayed loyal. And even I like to hear some of the guys who are already retired and on the PGA Tour champions are getting some of this money for their past contributions and what they've done for growing the game. My only question that I have about it is like the up and coming youngsters, like a Ludwig, like feels like he probably doesn't give a shit about this, right? Because he'd have to wait 8 more years to get the full 100% of his equity. I think it makes sense for like the established players. That was the only thing that like I saw kind of thrown out there on golf social media, and like kind of a concern is like, well, what's this going to do for Ludwig or Nick Dunlap, who are in year 1 of their PGA Tour careers? You know what I mean? That was the only like question I have about it. And I'm sure the PGA Tour was probably discussing it. I don't know, actually. You know, I would like to think the PGA Tour is competent, but then they prove to me time and time again that they're not. So I would like to think that there were discussions that we're having right now about this. Similar discussions were going on between the PGA Tour, but that was my one only little gripe, if you will, about this whole thing. Is I don't know if it makes sense for those guys.
Yeah, I feel like that has to be a discussion. Like if you run a business, I feel like you need to cover all bases. But I think the major thing was like, let's get the tour leaders and the guys that really drive the product. And not saying like Ludwig and Nick Dunlap and those guys don't,
You're
but
right.
the people from the beginning that started with this initial live battle, those guys got their reward. And let's be honest, they're completely deserving of the shit they went through, the money they turned down to stay on board with this mission. They got what they deserve for sure. And there has to be some type of framework or something that's being drawn up to start rewarding the other guys that are either up and coming, or they aren't top names on the tour, but they've stayed loyal and they didn't go. I'm sure there's a secondary market of something being drawn up where like, hey, you're going to get this over time, or you're going to accrue this over time, whether it's a percentage of equity yearly that you earn based on finishes or money, total money earned, whatever. Which I mean, if that was the case, then before we know it, Ted Scott's going to have a portion of the PGA Tour just being a caddy.
For real, for real. Teddy Scott is making. He probably doesn't have Rory beat now after the win this week at the Zurich, but prior to this past week had more money in his wallet from the 2024 PGA Tour season than Mr. McIlroy had. But I also, Ross, like to hear that the PGA Tour is going to be throwing $100 million per year at this as well, because I think there are just other things like me and you are referencing right now that they're going to have to go and shell out money to, and they're going to have to cover more costs. And being quite honest, like, this is a step in the right direction, as we said, for the PGA Tour. Tyrrell Hatton still reportedly got paid, what, $50-75 million from Liv. John Rahm made 350. I mean, this is still very minuscule in terms of what Liv actually paid some of these guys. So, and I know the PGA Tour is never going to be able to make whole what Liv could offer some of these players, but it's nice to at least hear that they recognize that it's not just like this one-time thing and the vested money over the next 8 years. It's, no, we're going to be pumping more money into this, giving it to more guys, and hopefully using it in different avenues to reward and monetize all of the players that they have that are making an impact here on the PGA Tour. So I like to hear that.
Yeah, I feel like there's some way that you can create like an aggregate of overtime, FedEx Cup standings, things like that, where you can develop like an aggregate system for obtaining and developing equity as you play over the course of your career.
That would have been one cool thing to see, is like exactly how they had everyone rated, because they kind of gave an insight in terms of like how they dictated what players were in certain ranges. And the top 36 got, I believe, 750 of the $900 million or whatever it was that they were shelling out. It would have been rather interesting to see exactly how everyone sorted, because they talked about, amount of appearances to the tour championship, longevity, consistency, victories, major victories, all that stuff, significance in social media and in growing the game and branding and marketing and whatnot. It would have been rather interesting to see like all of that compiled in a ranking and who would have fallen behind Mr. Tiger Woods at number one.
Yeah, I mean, that you hit it on the head. That's exactly what they went off of when they said they were going to do these equity payouts, was based on what have you done for the game of golf to date, is pretty much what they based it off of, which obviously we knew Tiger was going to get an astronomical number. But I feel like there is a way to develop for moving forward the younger players on the tour, for just taking into account like major victories, FedEx Cup points, finishes like that. Over time, you could develop something like, oh, you finished, sixth in the FedEx Cup points on average over the past 4 years. Here's your equity moving forward.
Right. And I think the biggest thing that we haven't touched on yet is, I don't know if this necessarily will solve the problem 100%, but now by giving equity to the guys who have stayed loyal to the PGA Tour, it kind of makes for a path for men's professional golf to merge, for LIV and the PGA Tour players hypothetically to be brought together, because the assumption would be those players who made the jump to LIV Golf and did not remain loyal to the PGA Tour, those who took the bag from the Saudi PIF and elected to jump ship, will not be given equity stakes into the PGA Tour and the newly minted PGA Tour enterprises moving forward. And again, I don't know if that's necessarily going to make everyone whole, if you will, in terms of what they could have made for LIV Golf, but I think it is the best solution that I've heard thus far in kind of getting everything back under one circuit moving forward.
Yeah, either that or you got to buy your way in.
I mean, either will do. Probably the latter is going to have to be what happens.
Yeah, right. cut a check into the equity fund, and you'll get something.
Speaking of cutting the check, let's talk about LIV Golf here for a second, as they kind of had their most prominent tournament of their schedule this past week at LIV Adelaide Down Under in Australia. I'm sure if you're a big-time golf fan, you probably saw videos and tweets or TikToks or whatever it was of the crazy crowds that showed out for that 3-day event for LIV Golf. Ross, in all honesty, because of a lot of things going on for me this weekend and the time change and a bunch of different other things, I didn't watch a second of LIV Golf. I didn't think the leaderboard was very captivating, but I did want to talk about a couple of things that I noticed from this tournament. First and foremost, it is very clear that this is like the prime time for LIV Golf down in Australia. It feels like that's almost their niche market in a sense, because they have Cameron Smith, the 2022 Open champion. He's probably the most popular Australian golfer in the world. If not him, then Jason Day, but Cam Smith is obviously a bit more relevant in today's day and age. But it still feels like, I'm sure Cam Smith has a huge impact on the crowds that are turning out, but just because, it is a golf tournament down in Australia with one of these main circuits, with having a lot of big name players, like it's an opportunity for the Australia fans to really go and show out in full support. And I think it's just a reminder of how well these national markets can really boom for you. And I think this is something that if the PGA Tour were smart, and I don't know that they are very smart, in fact, I question it week in and week out that they are whatsoever, but I think it's a reminder that these national markets are so important. And we get a taste of it, the Canadian Open, the week before the week before the US Open, or it's the Memorial, the week before the Memorial usually. But that always feels like it has a great atmosphere to it. And when you make these trips to unique places that, only get one tournament a year to kind of rally their whole country behind, it feels like it's such an opportunity. And the PGA Tour, the Mexico Open is kind of ho-hum year in and year out, but the Canadian Open always feels like it's got a good fan turnout, and I feel like it's something the PGA Tour should lean into a little bit more. The Genesis Scottish Open, I feel like, is an opportunity for them to lean into that even more moving forward, and just these unique places. It feels like it's something that LIV Golf has done a good job at, and being like its own unique thing in a sense, and almost recognizing what the PGA Tour isn't willing to do. That was one thing that I really noticed from this week. And just a reminder that, man, like if the PGA Tour, I think it's just a big opportunity for them whenever they have national opens, the Canadian Open. It's like a slam dunk type of week that you can potentially knock it out of the park and do yourself some real big favors. And I think even during the 2022 RBC Canadian Open, when Rory McIlroy won a couple of years ago, and obviously Nick Taylor last year was a great fan turnout, everyone going crazy. Like those are some memorable moments that people will look back on the season upon and remember. And I just think it would be really smart of the PGA Tour to really make sure they kill it on those type of weeks, because you get so much fan interaction there. And that's a big part of golf and growing the game, is the fan interaction. And also, Ross, you referenced this to me before we talked about it. You didn't watch much of Live Adelaide from what it sounded like when we talked prior to recording this, but you referenced going and watching the YouTube videos that Live Golf puts up. They put up awesome highlight videos on YouTube that are like 25 minutes long, not for a tournament highlight video, no, for every single round. So you can actually get an understanding of what the fuck is going on in case you didn't watch it. Whereas you go and watch the PGA Tour's highlight videos, hell, I every week before a new tournament starts, I go back and watch the round 4 highlights. Like this past weekend, I watched round 4 highlights for the CJ Cup Byron Nelson from last year to give myself a little bit of a refresher as to what happened down the stretch, how some of these holes shape out and whatnot. You got like 4 shots of Jason Day down the back 9 when there was like a bunch of guys in contention. And again, it's just another thing the PGA Tour is dropping the ball on when YouTube Golf, I know that's not necessarily YouTube Golf, but like YouTube is a really big search engine for golf these days. And the PGA Tour is putting out 8 little highlight videos that you can't really get a grip of anything that's going down. Whereas Live is recognizing that that's an important factor in growing the game. They're putting up these awesome highlight videos, and you actually get to understand what's happening in a given tournament. The PGA Tour, this is an easy solution here and something that's being done in men's professional golf. Look around. Come on, help yourself out. I always in the way of themselves, man. Always in the way.
I mean, like you said, I didn't watch it, but I understand what happened because I watched when I was working from home. I clicked on this morning. I think the video was like 37 minutes, and it was all 3 days of the tournament, 37 minutes, but it was just a breakdown of here's what happened, Live Adelaide, in essentially rounded. It's a 40-minute video. What happened over the 3 days in that tournament? Knocked out everything you needed to really know about what occurred.
It was excellent. And those are just little things. And I get shelling money out to players is absolutely important. Rewarding players for their loyalty, it's important. Getting them on board with your own business, making them a part of the business so we can all feel like, hey, we're all in this together now, arms in arms, side by side. Let's grow this motherfucking thing. I get that's important, but there are still areas that they blatantly ignore. And I mean, we don't even need to talk about the broadcasts. It was dog shit per usual. I'll give Shot Tracker a little bit of a break. I know people were furious that Shot Tracker wasn't working on the PGA Tour app this week. At least it's because they were doing a run through for Shot Tracker 2.0, which they're going to be wanting to utilize for the President's Cup in the fall. And this is the only team event that they get to kind of practice that on before rolling it out this fall. So I understand that, but it's just like, man, these are things you need to have. You need to have ways for people to follow what they want to follow, and not just what you're pumping out for a couple hours on the national market television that's interrupted by commercials every 5 minutes and you have to change the channel every 2 hours. Like, it's a fucking mission to go and watch this thing. And to even taking this in a further sense in terms of betting, yes, people will bet on the outright market because the odds are so juicy and it's intriguing, but you can't grow the betting side of things or getting fans into the betting market and like head-to-heads or top 20s or top 30s or certain things if you don't show them on TV. If you have no way for people to watch things, they're not going to want to bet on them. Who wants to go and sweat a bet through Shot Tracker for 2.5 hours? Nobody. You got to put these things on television. You got to put these things on YouTube. You got to give people avenues to see what's actually happening, not what you're just presenting them on CBS and Golf Channel with your awful announcers that have been rolling out there for 30 years. It's terrible.
I completely agree. I mean, again, we're not going to get into the coverage because we harp on it every week. It was the same shit, different week. As always, there's a lot of opportunities out there that PGA Tour is not capitalizing on. And I give my respect to Live, where the product is not the same, but the coverage, they do it. They do what they can with what they have, and they make it work.
I appreciate that they try to be different and they put eggs in different baskets and they're willing to go outside of their comfort zone and what's been done in golf for 20 years to actually make something innovative. I tip my cap to them that they're willing to actually fucking try things. End of rant. We'll move on here. One last thing that we'll touch on before wrapping up today's show, of course. We got to get back to the CJ Cup Byron Nelson as we're going back to the standard tournament play this week following the team event last week at TPC Lousiana. We're in Texas for the third time this season, Ross, and that puts a smile on my face because Texas is the only state that I've cashed bets this year. I won at the Valero Texas Open, won the Houston Open, trying to make it 3 for 3 this week in McKinney, which is roughly 30 miles northeast of Dallas. Not exactly a star-studded field here this week at TPC Craig Ranch, though, Ross. Not much of a surprise, I can say, though, because it is in a little bit of a dead spot here in the schedule, but you got Jordan Spieth, defending champion Jason Day, Siwoo Kim, Will Zalatoris, mostly notable Dallas natives here at the top, but you also got Adam Scott, Sung J M, Min Woo Lee, Tom Kim, another Dallas native, Benny On, Steven Yeager. Not a field to really be excited about, but kind of honestly, just given the signature events and watching Scotty run train through everyone, I'm kind of here for a different type of tournament this week with a ho-hum field, a little bit of a birdie fest at TPC Craig Ranch. I'm oddly itching at the neck a little bit to hopefully get another winner this week, Ross. What are your thoughts on this tournament?
In terms of betting for our show, this is one of the better weeks that we've had in a very long time.
Yeah.
That the odds are favorable. I went with a pick 5 this week for the fact that the odds are so high on people that if you hit, you are gonna be a very happy man for the next week if anything comes through. In terms of the course breakdown, everything I read on the course is gonna play super similar to Mexico.
Yeah.
And the way the Mexico Open went, where bombers, people that can bomb it and get in there, line up their hitting close for the birdie and eagle attempts. I don't know if you want to roll in some of our picks. I know you said you only had one out so far. I threw my 5 in this morning. Some of their odds have shifted, but to lead off, I did throw out. He's playing every single week. He catches my eye, and every single week he's just kind of floating around there. I did pick Siwoo Kim this morning. I did lock him down. I got him at 22-1. It looks since then he's been beaten down a little bit, down to like 16.
Yeah, so before we get into the picks, or I'll let you roll out Siwoo, obviously. Siwoo was very popular this week. He's been, tee to green, he has just been so solid all year long and quietly has not missed a cut this season either. He has been tremendous. It's just really coming down to the putter. But the first conversation that I want to have with you before we get into these picks is the top of the board, because it is so interesting this week. Jordan Spieth coming in as the betting favorite at 14 to 16-1, depending on where you're looking. You got Jason Day is the defending champ, who's had some nice high-end finishes, been a little bit all over the place, but obviously got it done at TPC Craig Ranch. Last year, he was at 18-1. You got Siwoo there's still a 22-1 out there actually right now at DraftKings Sportsbook, so that's a pretty good number. Like I said, it's been a lot of consistency out of Siwoo, but the putter's still been some issues. Willie Z, a high upside player. Adam Scott, to me, it's really tough to kind of figure out who should be the betting favorite here. But yeah, seeing it be Jordan Spieth is definitely a tough look. can't envision there are many people itching to bet this guy at 16-1, given what he's been doing this season, Ross.
I know we talked about it offline. I don't understand how he can be that low. The game is nowhere close. Like I'm more concerned about is Jordan going to make the cut this week than is Jordan going to win this fucking tournament.
Dude, it's been real bad out of Jordan. So here's his season-long finishes. After finishing third at the Century Tournament of Champions to open up the year, he finished T39 at Pebble Beach. That was a 70-man field. T6 at Phoenix, pretty solid. Was disqualified for signing an improper scorecard at Riviera. Finished T30 at the API. Missed the cut at the Players. Missed the cut at the Valspar. T10 at the Valero Texas Open, where he was still literally all over the place. I mean, could not have been more all over the place that week. Made a hole-in-one that week as well to kind of boost some of the numbers and his finishes. Missed the cut at the Masters dreadfully, and then was T39 out of 69 guys at the RBC Heritage. And I think the biggest concern is, like, there really hasn't been a consistent part of his game, like, in any area. Like, the putting hasn't been consistent, chipping, irons, driver. It hasn't been consistent whatsoever. This is a guy with one top 10 finish since the beginning of March, and he's 16-1. Can't do it.
Which just leads me to the same argument of all those finishes you just read off. How the fuck do we get 16-1 out of that?
Yeah, no, this is it. Because of the field, it makes for a really weird odds board. And I actually heard someone kind of compare it to what we had at Corrales a couple of weeks ago, where it's kind of like, well, who is the favorite here? Like, I honestly, maybe it should be Siwoo, just because of his consistency, and a Dallas native has played pretty well here in the past. Like, Siwoo's probably my favorite.
But, like, even with Corrales, when you looked in, Justin Lauer and Billy Horschel are 11 and 14-1 is like is favorites. Like, that made sense because Justin Lauer has been playing in the top 15 for weeks. Billy Horschel has been playing awesome golf for weeks. That when you go into a limited field like that, yes, those two guys should be at the top of the board. I don't see Jordan Spieth has 30 other fucking golfers beating him when he's in the field.
Yeah, no, it's definitely fair. It's literally just name value alone that has him. You could you could double those odds, and I don't know if I'd want it. Like 30-1 on Jordan Spieth. I don't know. I feel like some bomb's just as likely to win than he is. Like, I don't know.
You need to go further down. Like, you need to go 50, 60, maybe for the I'd play on the playing in Texas whole thing
right
in his backyard. Like, okay, at that number, like, sure, I'll throw something on that. But like this number, and I love Jordan Spieth. I've always loved Jordan Spieth. The way he's playing right now, this number just does not compute to me on how we get this number, other than pure name value of Jordan Spieth is playing and all these other guys aren't.
The one other thing I will say, and I think this is kind of become a little bit of a 3-week thing here for Jordan Spieth, because these are courses that he normally plays well at, but like going into the Masters, Jordan Spieth was a lower number than he should have been, and popular because he's normally very good at the Masters, right? And then he goes and misses the cut painfully. And then at the RBC Heritage, well, we know he's not playing all that great of golf, but Jordan Spieth has some really good results at Harbor Town, so his number is lower than what it should have been, winds up working disastrously. It's kind of the same thing again here this week for Jordan Spieth, because he finished second here in 2022. He finished T9 here in 2021, a Texas native that usually plays well in Texas. But it feels like it's just kind of shaping up to be the same exact disappointment out of Jordan Spieth, because we all know, even though he has good past results on this course, he's not showing anything to suggest he's in that form right here, right now, Ross. That's the biggest issue to me.
Honestly, with what you just said, right on the head, the only tournament in the past couple of weeks I even eyed Jordan Spieth for a little bit was the RBC, and it's because 2 years ago he won there, and then last year he finished fucking second to Fitzpatrick. where I was like, all right, maybe he can pull himself together. I did not feel well about him at Augusta, even though he normally plays really well at Augusta. I didn't feel it there. The last 2 weeks ago was the only one that I was like, all right, this is literally like the one place that he plays really well, and didn't show it.
I mean, I think he was 3 under through 5 holes or 4 under through 5 holes, and I was like, oh, maybe here's vintage speed that Hilton had. Nope. T39 finish. And like I said, the biggest thing about it to me, Ross, is there's just not one single part of his game that's been consistent all year long. It's like a mixed bag, flip of the coin type of feel on every part of his game. This is really, I mean, he's lost strokes with his irons for the last 5 weeks.
And I mean, at what point I've just keep like delving into at what point does he just have the fucking wrist surgery?
That is an interesting thought. That is an interesting thought because there have been rumors just circulating. Did it start at Heritage? It might have started at the Masters, actually. Can't remember exactly.
It's been ongoing. Every other tournament, the wrist is either super taped up or it's not. The past couple tournaments, he's basically had that thing taped solid. Where Jordan, you're not hiding from anyone. Like, we know it's more hurt than you're letting on. At what point do you just go fix it?
Dude, some of these numbers are so bad just looking at Jordan's profile. I know we got to talk about some other guys here other than Jordan Spieth. My final thought here on how could I absolutely feel confident in betting this guy at 16-1 when he's lost strokes ball striking in 5 of his last 6 and lost strokes around the green, where Jordan Spieth is the magic man, the wizard. He's lost strokes around the green in 5 consecutive starts, man. I wouldn't touch this guy with a 10-foot pole this week.
And if Jordan Spieth wins this week, I don't think there will be any two guys happier for Jordan. That great job, because it's great for the game of golf. I don't see it happening anytime soon, and I think Jordan just shut her down, get that fucking wrist surgery, and don't even worry about the President's Cup. We got it. Like, let's get that thing fixed so you can compete at Bethpage in a year and a half.
Yeah, no, it's unfortunate where things are trending right now for Mr. Jordan Spieth. And just with how vocal and everything, he's got to be very frustrated with where his game's at right now. So yeah, 16-1, I'm absolutely not getting there. But Ross, I thought you made a very interesting point about TPC Craig Ranch, where they're at this week for the 4th time for the Byron Nelson Championship. This course has only been on the PGA Tour schedule since 2021. I did oddly get Vedanta Vallarta vibes out of TPC Craig Ranch as well, because it's just flat. It's straightforward. It's wide open. And if the winds aren't gusting, there's really nothing that they can do to stop these players. We've seen the winning score here reach -23 in all 3 years. So it's a birdie fest, resort style layout at TPC Craig Ranch. You're going to need to be making birdies in bunches. You're going to need to be really good with the irons. You're going to also need the putter cooperating at the same point in time. But why I think it's also comparable to Vedanta Vallarta is because of the length. This course is over 7,400 yards at 7,414 yards exactly, but they have the 8th widest fairways, the 14th widest greens, and they have the easiest par 4s on the PGA Tour, despite 7 of the 11 coming at over 445 yards. There's just not a whole lot of trouble to be found from tee to green. And it's just a driver-friendly track where you can just kind of grip it and rip it, a la what we saw Jake Knapp do in his victory at the Mexico Open a couple of months ago. So very similar vibes, a lot of long holes, long par 4s. 3 of the 4 par 3s are over 215 yards. So I'm kind of looking at guys who are good with their long irons, but also are still able to make birdies in bunches. To me, honestly, it's birdies, irons, and putting here this week. And just because the track is a little bit longer and there's not a lot of trouble, I'm going to favor guys who can hit the ball a little bit further to cut in on some of this yardage. So that's my little bit of a breakdown on TPC Craig Ranch. If you're interested in reading up on more, make sure to go and check out my column that I dropped this morning at ontapsportsnet.com. Would greatly appreciate it. But Ross, I know you're already on here this week. Who are the other 4 players you're targeting for the CJ Cup Byron Nelson, brother?
So I just keep throwing him out there because I feel like he's got to come through at some point. I got Willie Z in there at the 22.
I thought you were going to say Alex Noren, and I wasn't going to be very happy. Yeah. Willie Z is an interesting one, man, because I think skill-wise, he's the best player in this field. Can he make enough putts to get to -23, -24? I know he can ball strike the hell out of it, and I like him on longer courses where he can use his long irons. I just worry about the putter a little bit. That's my one concern about Willie Z, but I think he's the most talented player in this field.
Yeah, that's part of the reason I threw it in there, is I was trying to figure out who is the best player in this field this week.
It's a valid
because
question.
It is a real crapshoot, literally, where I'm going, if we're going complete play, I think he's up there along with Siwoo, is two of the most complete players right now.
Fair.
As we move down my list, someone that's just the long irons, he can drive the ball in the long irons for some godforsaken reason. He has just flipped a switch and been hot the past couple weeks, firing off low rounds left and right. I nabbed Tom Kim at 35-1.
Tom Kim is a fascinating case to me, man, because I'm not going to lie, when I watched him at Valero, I literally wanted nothing to do with him at the Masters, and I was stunned when I saw him shoot, what was it, 65 during that final round on Sunday at Augusta. I was stunned to see that because, man, I know the talent that Tom Kim has, and I watched him actually win the Shriners in the fall in Las Vegas when he went back-to-back there. And listen, I know the talent that Tom Kim has, but just seeing what he did at Valero, I had never seen him that bad, man. He lost strokes all across the board there. He was playing with Akshay in one of the rounds on the weekend, and I was like, oh my God, this is absolutely brutal. But he's kind of found it ever since that final round at Augusta. Finished T18 at the RBC Heritage last week. The putter and the approach was really good, like I talked about. Those are two stats that I'm really going to be keying on this week, and I think they're the two areas you really need to strive in order to be at the top of the leaderboard and to be able to make enough birdies to kind of keep up with the pace here this week. And yeah, I think 35-1 is a more than fair number for Tom Kim. I personally, I like that it's a good talent play in terms of the number that you're getting in this field. Like Tom Kim at 35-1, like one of the most talented players in this field. I don't know if I'm necessarily expecting him to win right here, right now, but that's a very good number for the talent that he has, man.
Then we're going to move a little further down. Iron play elite right now.
Is it Tom Hoagie?
It is not. Iron play is elite. Sneakily been one of the top 5 iron players on the tour over the past several events. Had a good showing here last year. Looks like he's even hotter this year. 80-1, I grabbed CT Pan.
Oh, the Panimal? The Panamaniacs?
I did.
Who did he play with last? Did he play with Kevin Yu, right?
He played with Kevin Yu. Kevin Yu kind of shit the bed on him. Their low scores, that the days they had low scores was CT Pan striking it in there with the irons. And he did have a very good showing here last year. The iron game is even more on top than last year, where I think this is, for the value pick, the 80-1 down there. I really like that to come up. And sneakily, I saw some other articles out there that really had him zeroed in that this course can set up with a long iron play.
CT Pan has been a very fascinating case ever since he won the silver medal in that crazy playoff at the Olympics all those years ago. He's battled with some injuries, been a little bit up and down. I just pulled up his profile on rickrungood.com because other than seeing him pop up there with Kevin Yu last week, and shout out to my good buddy Tyler Krantz as well. He also was on the Kevin Yu CT Pan pairing last week. Other than that, I didn't really see or have seen much of what old CT Pan has been up to. The irons, yeah, have been really good for him. So I think that is interesting. Who you got to kind of cap things off here, Ross?
And to cap things off, you can call it a stand pick, anything you want. Jake Knapp won in Mexico. We have a really identical layout here, and at 90-1, I couldn't leave that off of my card this week. That number I found. If you're going off of where we don't really know who the best player in this field is, I found it really ironic for a guy that already has a victory this season on a course layout very similar to this one, that he is that far down. And I get it that he struggled since the Florida swing and game is kind of 50-50 which Jake Knapp is going to show up every week. It was more the number pick that if the Jake Knapp we know and saw at the beginning of the year shows up, that number is well worth it.
No, I completely agree. In a field like this, you could do far worse with your long shots. I know Jake Knapp was as big as 110 to 1 to open things up this morning. And if you go digging, that number still might be available out there. I know it has not been very good for Jake Knapp since he had that 2-week stretch where he won in Mexico and then followed that up with a T4 at the Cognizant Classic. But like you said, if Jake Knapp plays to his ceiling, this is one of there are few better places for him to do that at than TPC Craig Ranch. I mean, this thing is absolutely wide open, like I alluded to. He can absolutely go and bomb it there. Yeah, the short game's a question mark, but what I think interesting too, Ross, is I haven't mentioned this on the show. This is, since it's moved to TPC Craig Ranch, this has been a very tough tournament to gauge in terms of like the data suggesting who should play well leading in, because it is just a birdie fest and a little bit of a crapshoot and honestly a bit of a putting contest as well. Like some guys are just going to play well for whatever reasons. You have to be okay with that. Like your data and everything isn't going to be perfect on a week like this where, everyone's going to be making birdies. The course is just really easy. So I think you could certainly do worse with long shots than taking a stab on a guy like Jake Knapp. Like I said, this is just a very good setup for him. So I do really like that pick down low here on the betting board. As for myself, I'm still kind of figuring out what I want to do here, man, because honestly, I'm just not all that intrigued with the top of the board. Like, there are a lot of questions that I have about certain guys. I like Siwoo probably the best, but I don't know if I can trust him to make enough putts to get to 2023 under. Same with Will Zalatoris, same with Adam Scott. I'm never going to bet Alex Noren at 25 to 1. Sungjae's been lost with the irons basically all year. Minwoo, it feels like this is a good track for him, but there hasn't been a whole lot of consistency in his game. Benny On's great from tee to green, but I don't think he can make enough putts to get there. Like, there are so many question marks with guys at the top of the board that I really feel like this is going to be one of those weeks where I take a stab on like 7 or 8 guys from this like 35 to 150 to 1 pocket, because I'll be able to fit them all in on my betting card this week. I'm not 100% certain I'm going to do that, but just based on what I'm getting to right now, I will say one guy at the top who is interesting to me and probably have a little bit of recency bias here is Steven Yeager, 35 to 1. And I know he got a winner for me at the Houston Open a few weeks ago, but I would be off Steven Yeager because since that win, he's putted poorly each of the last 2 weeks, and that's kind of his Achilles heel. Except the one reason that I was really high on him at the Houston Open is because he has putted so well in his career in the state of Texas, and he's another guy who's really picked it up with the driving distance, can absolutely mash it off the tee. So Steven Yeager at 35 to 1 to me is a little bit interesting, and I honestly wouldn't be surprised if that number drifted closer to 40. So I haven't officially bet it yet, and I'm going to be patient on it. But from this middle range, some guys who I also think are intriguing. Mackenzie Hughes, his number has been bet down a little bit, but he's been playing really well here as of late. And the putter, that can certainly get hot from time to time. Adam Schenk, 55 to 1, has been playing really solid over the last month. Seamus Power is another guy who I've kind of got my eye on at this point in time. CT Pan's teammate from last week, Kevin Yu, is one of the bombs that I'm thinking about. The only bet that I have in as of right now, Ross, you're going to like this one because you were on him a couple of weeks ago. It's Justin Lauer, 90 to 1. The long irons have been tremendous for Justin Lauer. Tee to green, he's been really solid, been really good on bent grass putting surfaces in his career as well. 90 to 1 for a guy who actually going into Mexico, I was intrigued by. He finished T3 there that week and has really kind of kept that momentum going since then. So Justin Lauer, 90-1 to me, was the first click that I made this week, interestingly enough. But Peter Quest at 100-1 is another intriguing name for me this week. And a little bit further down the board, Nick Dunlap, 175-1. I know it hasn't been very good for him, but the Houston Open, he showed some signs of life at, and I feel like there are some similarities between these two courses, and we know he can make birdies in bunches based on what he did at the American Express. 175-1 for Nick Dunlap's talent, I thought personally was a pretty good number, and I haven't bet this yet, Ross, but I'm going to bet it. 400-1. Everyone's betting his teammate, even though he was the guy who couldn't do shit down the stretch last week. Give me Ryan Brehm, 400-1. I'll take it.
I like the Justin Lauer. I like the Nick Dunlap. There's usually one or two guys that like Friday morning, early afternoon, I'll throw a flyer on when something's a little bit more clear that wasn't in my card. And I honestly, because we can't determine what this field exactly is, that's probably going to be the case again this week, where there's probably going to be a Friday flyer on someone as we start to see it take some shape. So I don't know, man. We'll definitely talk about it as we get into the week, but I have a feeling there's going to be a Friday flyer or two thrown out there when we try to get any semblance of what the hell this tournament is this week.
Exactly. We're still trying to put our fingertips on it, if you will. But I think that's what makes this tournament interesting. And I'm not someone who's usually too hyped up for birdie fests or these type of fields. But it's just a nice change of pace with what we've been getting on the schedule recently. So I'm surprisingly here for it. We'll have more content coming out throughout the course of the week in terms of my finalized picks and whatnot. So make sure to stay tuned for that. Make sure to go and follow at On Tap Golf as well on X so you can stay up to date on all of the latest things that we're going to be pumping out. And also make sure to go and give us a follow as well on either Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. It's 100% free in that way. If you're not able to catch up with us live, you'll still be able to tune into all of the latest episodes. And also, if you are thinking about going and wagering on the 2024 CJ Cup Byron Nelson, or maybe even Live Singapore this week if you're a true psycho, and you're not already a member over at Bet Rivers, make sure to use our promo code ONTAP to get up to a $250 bonus with your first deposit. Everyone who tuned in, as always, thank you very much on behalf of myself, Jack Bushman, and my partner, Ross Baran. We greatly appreciate you, everyone. More content coming out throughout the course of this week, so make sure to keep those peepers peeled for that. And until next time, everyone, crack 'em, lock 'em. We'll see you next time.